Well, if people think that the United States of America is controlling this border, they are wrong. This is controlled by the cartels. This is an entire humanitarian crisis. This is a real problem. We all have to work together.
Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
Pollster and host of the Political Trade Secrets podcast, Dustin Olson.
Dustin Olson.
Dustin Olson.
And Dustin Olson, pollster at American Pulse. They work for both Republicans and Democrats. And he hosts a podcast, Political Trade Secrets. Oh, we love that. We like that podcast.
Now from Washington, D.C. is pollster Dustin Olson.
And welcome to the show. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. And looking forward to this conversation that we're about to have about the border. You see our guest. I'll be bringing him on in just a second. Kurt Schneider, who's the soon-to-be Sheriff of Ashland County. And we're looking forward to having him on the program. But before that, I want to talk about something that's coming up on Thursday. Thursday, we're going to be having our final poll for American Pulse. You can find out about us at americanpulse.us. We're going to have our final poll for the 2024 election, and I'm looking forward to finding out what our final national poll is going to tell us. We have our interviewers are currently in the field talking to people right now to find out what they think as we go into these final days of the election. And speaking of polling, the purpose of today's episode, we're going to be talking to Kurt in a moment, specifically about the border. And as pollsters, we've been looking at these issues for the last year or so, and our polling has made it very clear that this is the top issue, one of the top issues for the American people right now. And normally we see the economy, and then really affordability is what I would call it right now, but economy, inflation, and really how expensive things are. That's the number one issue. And then right after that is immigration and the border. Those are always the top two. Actually, we just got out of the field about a week and a half ago, and we were in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, which is going to be one of the states, if not the state that decides this election, we had as the top issues there 46.8%. If you combine the top two issues, 46.8% either said economy and inflation or immigration and the border. And in that case, it was 19.3% said immigration and the border, and 27.5% said economy and inflation. And when we asked those questions, people tell us in Pennsylvania, they said that they preferred Trump on handling that. It was about 53.4% trust him more to handle that issue than Harris at 43%. That's in Pennsylvania. By the way, you can go to pollingclub.com. You can get access to that poll right now. And we will be making it available for you as well here when we release our new poll coming soon. On Thursday morning, we'll be releasing that. So if you want to have access to that poll, please do check us out. Go to pollingclub.com and sign up to get the new final poll for the election and the Pennsylvania poll. Interestingly, on our last national survey, we asked the question of the approval of the Biden-Harris administration on this topic. Do you approve or disapprove of the way the Biden-Harris administration is handling immigration and the border? And approve was 34.8% and 56.8%. So that tells you that this is definitely the number one issue for people. People have a very strong opinion of it. And then one last thing. A year ago, this is something that has been going on for a while. We had as a question we wanted to ask. We did a whole national security poll, which you can also get at pollingclub.com. And we asked the question, this is a year ago, about this time we released it. Some have expressed concern that China, drug cartels, and terrorists are exploiting the vulnerabilities at our southern border and in our immigration system to introduce large quantities of fentanyl and other drugs to engage in human trafficking, including child and sex trafficking, and potentially carry out terrorist activities in the U.S. And not much has changed over the last year, but people who agree that that's a concern, 64.6% said that a year ago, and 21.9% disagreed with that. So this is an issue that is important to people, as well as something that people's views are pretty set. So we decided maybe we would just go and find out for ourselves what actually is happening. So before I bring in Kurt to talk a little bit about his personal take on what happened in the, what's happening at the border. The reason why I have Kurt on today is that at Olson Strategies Advertising, my partner and I, Sean Bartley, we worked with Kurt during his primary, and one of the things that he said that he wanted to do was to go to the border and see for himself what's actually happening there. So he led a delegation of Ohio officials to go to the border, and we came along and we brought our videographer and we produced for Kurt a mini documentary, and I want to share that with you right now. And when we come back from that, with our footage and what we learned at the border, I'm going to talk to Kurt about what people need to know about the situation at the border. So we decided to come to the border to actually find out for ourselves what's happening here in Arizona and along the border. And the folks of Cochise County, the sheriff's office here, has welcomed us in, and it showed us their SABRE unit and all of the activities that they have going on, that the people of this state and the people of this county have decided to take the leadership upon themselves to actually help deal with the ramifications of the border. And one of the first things I noticed when we got here is that you have people living in a regular community in America. However, you have a huge border patrol presence, you have a lot of law enforcement. It's definitely having an impact on the local community, but ultimately Cochise County is kind of the superhighway to the rest of the country, where if the best day they get 60% of the people are still getting through, they might apprehend 39% of the folks that are coming across the border. And this is really ground zero for what they call the gotaways, the people who are of military age, people who aren't going to be able to get asylum, so they decide to come through here and spread out throughout the rest of the country. The other thing that's very clear is that the cartels control the border, and that this is a huge $1 trillion business of smuggling humans, and the humanitarian toll is remarkable. And people don't just get to go about their lives once they get here, that they're then partly in indentured servitude to the cartels after that. So this has a huge humanitarian impact, and it really is a terrible thing for our country. And they're good people who are doing everything they can to try to mitigate the problems, and we're grateful for everything that they're doing.
There's been a lot of talk around the country, around the nation, about this humanitarian crisis that's happening all over the country. Every state is a border state. I thought it to be a prudent decision to take a delegation of leaders from Ashland County to put eyes on this crisis firsthand, figure out how it's going to affect us locally, and be more prepared so that when we have this influx of migrants coming here by their choice or by some other force, then we're going to make sure we have the handle on it so we can deal with it.
There are people that are taking advantage of this border situation to make money, and they're sacrificing innocent Mexican lives, and people from all around the world, quite candidly. They're sacrificing their lives in the name of making money. Think of the cartels. Think of the human trafficking that we've heard about, the drug trafficking.
Well, if people think that the United States of America is controlling this border, they are wrong. This is controlled by the cartels. They're the ones that are calling the shots, letting people know when to come across, where to come across, how many to come across, what to bring across. And this is purely a reactionary situation on behalf of the United States government and Cochise County Sheriff's Office. I mean, these guys, God bless them, they're doing whatever they can with no help from our government. So, it's a problem. It's a big problem.
It's not just building the wall. There's that three-tiered approach for security: the lighting, the technology with cameras, obviously the physical wall, but then also the men and women to secure the border. It's kind of a three-prong approach that is not being done here in our country. We've got to do that for our American people. We have to do that. But that makes when they're traveling on that interstate, they're dumping people in many states, including Ohio and potentially even our beautiful Ashland County. It's really important that we get this right.
This is an entire humanitarian crisis. I mean, we have got people coming across here dying while they're trying to come across here for money, for drugs. So this is an effect that happens all over the country. This is not just a Arizona crisis or a Texas crisis. Every state in the union is a border problem crisis.
In fact, if you take a look at the statistics over the last couple of years, we have seen a double-digit uptick in the number of men and women that are being pulled off of Interstate 71 into our courtroom in Ashland, Ohio. It's costing our local taxpayers to address the very men and women who are getting through this fence or over this fence or getting into this country illegally.
These people are coming across basically slave labor. That's what's happening. They establish a relationship based on this initial payment, and they work it off for the rest of their life, but they're basically married now to the cartels. You know, I did you a favor, you paid me great, thanks, we love it, but you're gonna continue to do this or bad things are gonna happen to you and your family. So this is not just an isolated, hey, I'm gonna give you 5-10 grand, thanks for helping me get across the border and enjoy my life. They're working it off, they're selling themselves, they're selling their kids, their families. They're poisoning our country with these fentanyl and these drugs and the methamphetamines. So this is not just an isolated thing. This is a continual problem. It's a huge network.
It ties in perfectly as a pro-life leader that just these humanitarian issues we need to also take a look at, because children are lost. We don't know where they are. People's lives that are going about their day-to-day life, going to school, going to a birthday party, they're putting their life at risk every day because they don't know when that light turns green who's coming down the interstate. And so I think it's so important that we do secure our border so that we can protect human life in America.
Vote for a president who's going to get stuff done. Donald Trump, he's the guy. He's been talking about this forever. Bernie Moreno, we got to surround people with the president that also have the same likenesses. And the third thing is our local officials. We got to have people that are standing up, talking about this stuff, understanding it, doing the research on their own, not just listening to somebody else's story, and engaging this stuff. This is a real problem. We all have to work together.
And with that, we have the man here with me right now. We've got the next Sheriff of Ashland County, Ohio, Kurt Schneider. Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking some time to be with us.
Thanks, Dustin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And people got to see you there on the border. And I really commend you for bringing together folks from the local area and taking them down to the border, because I will tell you from having been there with you that I was personally shocked that it was actually worse than I had ever even imagined. Yeah, I figured that, Fox News probably gave it the worst shine you could possibly give it. And it turned out that I think they might be pulling their punches as far as what's actually happening down there. So, I mean, why did you decide to bring folks down to the border and to take on this issue?
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. I think I 100% agree with you. This thing has not been getting the attention it needs. It's been way underscored as something that's not very important. What's happening down there? This thing has a lot of ramifications, and quite frankly, should be the top priority of whatever administration gets in the White House. Mm-hmm. This is a systemic issue. This is a network of criminal activity that's spread across our country right now. It started at the border. It's continuing at the border. Our federal government is doing very little, if anything, right now. They're completely relying on the local officials down there to do something. And God bless Sheriff Daniels down there and his crew. They're doing a great job. And it's unfortunate that they're not getting much help from them. So, but, we need to see this thing firsthand here locally in Ashland County. It's easy to listen to the stories on Fox News or CNN or whichever media outlet you want to listen to, but the reality is that they're telling the half-truths. And what's really happening down there are many layers of mostly what could be easily labeled as probably the biggest humanitarian crisis since the Holocaust. I mean, we've got millions and millions of people coming across this country, across the border into this country, who are basically indentured servants, slavery, something we've abolished in this country decades ago. And now we are not only allowing it, but in some fashions perpetuating it by not getting these folks back to where they belong. The term illegal aliens, illegal immigrants kind of speaks for itself. It is a crime, and we are allowing it to happen. So I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to go down there and see what's happening firsthand.
So some of what you said would have been shocking, I think, to some people. I will say that I came away from it being shocked that the cartels have operational control of the border, and that if you're coming across the border, that in many cases that you're paying the cartel. And as you said in the video, that do you actually think you're going to be paying that off? Like, these people are in indentured servitude. They are in debt to the cartel going forward for however long, between $8,000 to $15,000 for an individual. A family might be $30,000. One thing I was shocked by was that if you are a criminal, if you're somebody with some sort of felony in your background, the cartel makes more money on you. You might be paying $100,000, $150,000, something like that. So they get to make more money off of it from doing that. I have down below that if people want to go to your website, SchneiderforSheriff.com, they can actually watch your mini documentary that we just showed, and they can get that. And if they want to watch it again and see what specifically you're talking about. So I want to mention, so you talked about, we went to Cochise County and Sheriff Daniel, and this is where Kamala Harris went to, I guess it was a month and a half ago, one of the first times that she'd been there. Obviously, she had been tasked with focusing on the border. And these are some of the things that he had in his letter that he gave to her directly when she was there. He said, according to the Customs and Border Patrol, Border Protection, there have been more than 10.5 million illegal entry encounters nationwide, with more than 8.5 million of those encounters at the southwest border since the beginning of fiscal year 2021. Of course, that corresponds with when they took office. By comparison, CBP recorded around 3.1 million such encounters between 2017 and 2020. Just this year alone, there have been 2.597 or basically 2.6 million nationwide encounters by CBP. And in addition, there are an estimated 2 million gotaways who have evaded CBP and are now present in the United States. That's interesting to me. I want to ask you about that. So Cochise County is a little bit different than, say, parts of Texas, right? Like, if you are coming across the border there, it's a little bit different than showing up at some processing center.
Yeah, that's correct. Cochise County has 83 miles that butt up against the Mexican border. 23 miles of that has the wall. The other 60 miles is completely wide open. There is nothing there. Mountainous terrain, desertous terrain. So essentially, you have a wide open funnel to be able to, send whatever you want, literally, through that access. And so it's staggering to see that we are allowing that. I mean, we live in a post 9/11 era where we had, a few planes, a couple handfuls of individuals kill 6,000 of our American citizens here. And now we are allowing millions of unknown individuals coming into this country, going wherever, doing whatever, and we have no idea what they're up to. And I think, the sheriff represents in that letter the National Sheriff's Association, and I think even more staggering numbers are that 400 people have been encountered that are on the known terrorist watch list at these ports of entry, and almost 1,400 of them are still being encountered. That's a crazy number. 38% they estimate that they're catching what's actually coming across. So these are staggering numbers. It's very concerning to me as the person who's supposed to be charged with keeping our folks safe here in Ashland County. And frankly, it's going to be quite the challenge with this kind of nonsense happening.
So I was struck by, so you mentioned the indentured servitude. I was struck by, we talked about drug smuggling, but that there's a human smuggling component. And so that's what a big portion of what they're doing and what they're making money off of is the human smuggling. But I was surprised to find out, and I'd like to hear you talk about it, that once they get to the border and the cartels get them to the border, the cartels are having other people take them from the border up to places like Phoenix, where then these folks, some of them wonderful people, some of them criminals, but some of them wonderful people. However, they're within the cartel system, and then they're sent out to the rest of the country. Tell me a little bit about what we learned about how they're getting people from the border to Phoenix, and what that's all about.
Yeah, it's a very complex syndicate. You know, the cartels, they have reached out through all kinds of social media outlets to folks in our country. Some of them American citizens. You know, almost 90% of what they have been encountering there at the sheriff's office, 90% American citizens who are being recruited and paid large sums of money to come down and grab these folks, load them up into their vehicles, buses, trailers, trucks, cars, smuggle them from the border as fast as they can to evade law enforcement and get them to whatever their destination may be. That's been prearranged by the cartels.
Yeah.
So it's a huge criminal syndicate. It's the modern day mob, what's happening. And, you know, unfortunately, people are dying as a result of this.
Yeah.
Law enforcement down there chasing these folks. They're involved in crashes. You know, they're getting killed trying to evade law enforcement. They're killing innocent civilians in other vehicles. So it's a tragedy all the way around.
Yeah, I was shocked to find out that they have kids as young as 12 that they have recruited and are paying them a lot of money to drive these vehicles, and that when they have these, you know, a lot of them are Americans who are being paid by the cartel to drive people, that when they encounter law enforcement, they do react differently, and they'll drive 120 miles per hour, and they're not going to stop. And even when they stop pursuing them, they continue to drive like that and potentially kill people. And so, speaking of kind of the crime aspect of this that comes from it, you know, there's the horrific cases of like Lake and Riley in Georgia and others across the country. Sheriff Daniels in his letter mentions some of those tragic events. Talk about how this criminal element can impact communities across the country.
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, obviously the most concerning part is, you know, we don't even know who these people are. We don't know where they're at. And we don't know why they're here. Certainly the implication is that you're an illegal immigrant, you know, you're doing something criminal to get here. Therefore, it's not likely you're here to help us. You know, there's probably something you're here to do wrong. Now, whether that's recreational, you know, you're used to doing that from where you come, or whether you're here purposeful to do something, either way, they're coming here illegally to do bad things. And unfortunately, it's hard to find out where they're at, what their motivations really are. And so we just need to be vigilant, making sure we're observant, and you know, keeping our folks as most educated that we possibly can with this.
So the thing that I came away with this. So there's the criminal aspect. That's, you know, everyone who breaks the law to come across the border, they're by definition that's a criminal act. But there's a smaller portion that are the violent criminals, and that's obviously a big problem in the cases that we talked about. But then they're also under the control of a criminal cartel. They're in debt to them. So that's obviously a huge problem. But at the end of the day, and this is what I came away from it, is that border security, to secure the border, is extremely important. It's compassionate, and that by stopping the process of securing the border 4 years ago, it actually put more people in harm's way. People who are now in indentured servitude, as you put it, people who are now in debt to the cartel and will be probably for the rest of their lives here in our country. You have people who are dying crossing the border. And one of the things I was shocked by that I think people need to know. So there's the wall, but there's also the technology. There's the all-terrain road that goes by the wall. That all this stuff was to come together to be used to secure the border, plus more border patrol. So the Biden-Harris administration wants to pretend like they want to secure the border now. But the thing I found shocking, so you have the border wall stopped. Like they stopped building it. You saw it in your documentary. You saw the pallets of wall that are just sitting there rotting, that they paid 50 cents on the dollar to not build. And then they have the fiber optic line that they go all the way underneath the new wall, which they could turn on at any moment. Like if they wanted to have that on, that what that does is it senses vibration. So if someone's cutting through the wall, they can tell. That could be turned on. And they told us about a case of a young lady who was climbing the wall and somehow got her ankle caught and then ended up hanging upside down. And ultimately, she suffocated, because if you hang upside down for days in the hot, you will suffocate to death. And the cartel, of course, just left her there. But had the Biden-Harris administration, if they just would turn on the fiber optics underneath the wall, people like that would be saved. So they are killing people by their just headstrong insistence on not securing the border because it was Trump's idea or whatever it was. That actually is killing people. And there are other examples like that were just shocking to you to find out when we were there.
Yeah, and this is exactly the issue, is that apparently this current administration thinks with blinders on. They don't look for the big picture of this thing. And we are killing innocent people. People are dying trying to get here, where we could be preventative in ensuring that this thing is handled in a manageable fashion. And that's what this boils down to. The wall not being there allows for the reverse funnel effect. If we build the wall, we create the barrier, we funnel everything in particularly one way. We provide all of these other pieces of technology, under the multi-prong approach to what the border security should be, including lights, cameras, border patrol, and the actual physical barrier. And we're going to save lives. It's going to be less likely these folks are trying to come across illegally or in any other manner other than coming through the ports of entry. Mm-hmm. So you're right. I mean, they're looking at this thing through a small lens. They're not looking at the broader picture. And it is our job to, as Americans, we are a kind-hearted, gentle folk who truly have a value of life. The cartels value life at the $0 sign for them. That's all it boils down to. They can't get anybody across, they don't get any money.
And it's become a $1 trillion industry, and the amount of money that they're making on a day-to-day basis and the amount of money that we are paying to process people is just shocking to see that's happening in this country. So a couple things. We have your website there, SchneiderForSheriff.com. People can go there to watch the video. And it's something I encourage people to do. I was shocked when we were there. If you watch the video that people can find at SchneiderForSheriff.com, and you see there's a hill, you see you see some of the Obama wall, you see some of the Trump wall, and then you see where the Trump wall stops. And then you see a ridge. And on that ridge, what is it that people, and maybe if they look closely, they might see up on the ridge that we're looking at someone, we have binoculars, and what do we see?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when I was watching the little video, obviously the documentary, I kept catching myself being the policeman that I've been for 30 years, looking out of the corner of my eye, because there's a cartel scout sitting at the bottom of the tree with a pair of binoculars, a rifle, and very sophisticated communication system. And we're watching them as they're watching us, with some significant firepower. So, it was a little eerie to be there, obviously, when we were there watching this stuff. But yeah, they control it. There's no doubt. They're the ones that are calling the shots, not us. And
as they said in Cochise County, most of the gotaways are happening around there. And a good day is if they can apprehend 39%. We were there, and they have all this technology that they know when people are coming across, but they can't necessarily have people there. And we knew of people who were in vehicles, and we knew they were out there, that we went on a ride along, and they were never able to be apprehended. So those people made it all the way up to Phoenix, and who knows where they are in their country. There were clearly people who were avoiding law enforcement, so they weren't looking for asylum. So we while we were there, we knew of people who have come through illegally and are trying to avoid. Even the Biden administration offers this app that you can just easily get in. Those folks, the people who want to avoid that makes you wonder about what they're up to. I know that you were at an event yesterday there in Ashland County, and there's a lot of people from across the country. By the way, if anybody has a question, you can post it. We have quite a few people watching right now across all the different live streams that we're on. So if you have a question, please do post it. But you were at an event yesterday, and I'm going to tail that in with a question of what people can do to take action on this. A lot of people probably feel like they don't have power to do something about this, but what can every American do to actually secure the border, to save lives, to be compassionate through border security? What can Americans do to take action on that?
Sure. Well, I'll give you two answers to that, because I think it's important that you incorporate both. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to put someone in the White House that genuinely cares and has a plan about what this terrible border failure is right now at the south part of our country. And that's Donald Trump. Listen, this guy has been talking about the border crisis, for a long time now, 8 years. And even before that. So we have to focus on a guy's policy and really what it stands for from a law enforcement perspective, which is the safety of our communities and ultimately the safety of our country. And this is the guy that has the plan. Second to that is obviously you're tailoring or tagging on to the president's taking office, hopefully, is our local senator race, our local Senate races, and this goes across the country. People who stand with President Trump, people who understand how important it is to secure the border and actually have a plan. It's easy to talk about it. It's easy to sit there and get a photo op, but these are the folks that we have to have in our Congress and our Senate, in the White House, to protect our borders and to keep our country safe. And locally, I think our folks need to be vigilant. They need to be paying attention to what's happening across the country. They need to be voting in local leaders who are also very astute and aware of what's happening, and not only at our southern borders, but our northern borders and our partner states that are surrounding us. These are things that our folks need to be watching and listening for, and certainly bringing to the attention of local law enforcement anything they see that might be out of the ordinary. So these are the things our people in the country need to really be paying attention to and can do here in the short period of time. We've got a window of 7 days, less than that now, 6 days, getting people in the White House and the Senate and our Congress that really care about that southern border. It should be the top priority.
Absolutely. So you mentioned your local U.S. Senate race. So Ohio, you're in Ohio, and yesterday you were at a Bernie Moreno event, I think in Ashland County. Yep. How did it look, and what are you seeing on the ground?
It was wonderful. Bernie's got a lot of support here in Ohio. I think Bernie's going to win this thing. I sure hope so. And I'm confident that he'll do us a great job in the Senate. He's a very stand-up guy. And we had probably about 100 people here locally. It was kind of a last-minute effort that we knew that Bernie was coming to town, and had quite the turnout here locally in Ashland County. And so he's got a lot of support around Ashland County. I'm confident he's going to win and beat Sherrod Brown. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and keep praying.
Well, I appreciate you working really hard to get other people elected. You are, I say, soon to be sheriff, because you won your primary and you now have no opposition, though you still want people to get out and vote for you. But you are going to be the sheriff come January, and you've already started working towards that, getting in place and being ready day one. So I really appreciate what you've done, and for stepping up, running for office, and for all of your many years in law enforcement. And again, people can go to SchneiderforSheriff.com to see the mini documentary. Check out and be sure to look for that cartel member. Maybe I wasn't that smart enough to be scared. I didn't even think much about it when I was like, oh, yeah, it makes sense, there's cartel up there. But anyway, it was fascinating to see. Thank you for involving us and for giving us the opportunity to put together the documentary, and for your leadership on the issue. And anything else you want to tell people before we go?
No, I would just tell people to get out and vote. This is one of the most important elections in the history of this country. I believe that. There's a lot of other people that believe it. And I think you've gotten plenty of examples here lately, especially this one with the border crisis, particularly in a post 9/11 era. We cannot allow folks like Kamala Harris to get into the White House. It would certainly be a tragedy for the American people and for every other person trying to come here to have a better life. So God bless everybody. Please get out and vote. Do your civil duty and your civic duty to make sure we get the right folks leading the country.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kurt. Appreciate it, and good luck in office.
Thank you.
That was Kurt Schneider, soon to be the next sheriff of Ashland County, Ohio, and talking about the border. And it was great to have him on. Really do appreciate the opportunity to join him and to put together that mini documentary, and for his leadership on that. I'd like to let people know that we are going to be releasing our final 2024 election survey on Thursday. So you can go to pollingclub.com, sign up to get those as they are released. I do think that I was here actually, if you're watching this live, in about an hour and 15 minutes, I'll be on with Bill O'Reilly on the No Spin News on the 1st, which you can go to, I think, thefirsttv.com or something, but you can find it all over the place. But I'll be on talking with him about where the polls are right now, the trends that we see, how close it is in swing states, that Donald Trump has taken the average of polls. He's taken the lead nationally, which is, that doesn't happen. The Republicans do that. So anyway, we have a sense of where things are going, but in the last week, a lot of stuff can happen. Famously in 2000, Bush was leading, the DUI came out, and then we ended up with a very long election. So you never know what's going to happen. I agree with Kurt. Go vote. It doesn't matter if you live in California and New York. I think we want whoever wins to have the popular vote and the Electoral College. But do go to pollingclub.com and be sure to sign up to be able to get our final 2024 American Pulse survey. And then additionally, if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed our other episodes, please go to subscribe on YouTube, on X, on Facebook, whatever your favorite podcast platform is. We really do appreciate it and hope that you do check us out. And if you subscribe on any of the social media, you will get these when we go live, and you'll be able to join us and be a part of the conversation. So with that, thank you for the comments. We weren't able to get to them today, but do continue to post comments. We do appreciate it. And with that, this has been another episode of Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes, and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.
Well, if people think that the United States of America is controlling this border, they are wrong. This is controlled by the cartels. This is an entire humanitarian crisis. This is a real problem. We all have to work together.